thing works. And until YouTube tells us it's live, I sit here and ramble on like a complete idiot. So we'll see how that works out. But anyway, supposedly I'm live now, and I'm going to trust that that's true. It's time to talk about day 2 of the 2022 World's Strongest Man and what happened. What an exciting day it was. Legit, serious exciting. And so exciting because as I joked around with the guys who were joining me today, we sat here and we stared at these screens. These screens that basically have nothing on them except a little bit of line of text. We don't get to watch the events. I don't get to see them any more than you do. But it was still exciting. We still had a great time. And you guys should join us for a session if you haven't done so yet. But here's what you got to know about today's events. You came here and you want to know certain things, like if you were checking out yesterday, did Mitchel Hooper continue to do well? I mean, yesterday nobody could have expected he would do that unless you're maybe Mitchel Hooper himself. It sounded like he was maybe a bit surprised, although confident. Could he continue that, or was something a little more realistic where he landed today? Did last year's winner Tom Stoltman, did he continue to put a stamp out there and say, "Hey, fantastic"? What about other guys like Oleksii and Martins, 4 former World's Strongest Man winners? Oh, in this thing this year. How'd they all fare? Yesterday, something uncanny happened. We had 5 groups. In the 5 groups, we had group leaders who didn't just win one event. All 5 group leaders yesterday won both events they competed in. I don't know if that's ever happened or not. I don't remember it happening before, but pretty cool. And all 5 of them came in and say, "This is my group. I'm here." Pretty cool. Did that continue? Could that continue? Could all group leaders still continue to get max points throughout this thing? I don't know. Let's take a look, shall we? So we'll start with answering some of those questions, and we'll start right away with Group 1, and if Tom did it. If you're looking at the screen right now, big spoiler alert. You already know the answer, right? And by the way, this whole thing is going to be results, results, results. If you don't want to know what happened at day 2 of the World's Strongest Man because you want to be surprised and watch it on TV later, fair play to you. But why the heck did you click on the link to start with? It says right here what you're going to find inside. So, spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. You're going to know what happened if you watch this video. If that's not for you, get off the freaking video. All right. So, right off the bat, Group 1, Tom Stoltman yesterday. We know that he didn't just win one event, he won both events. He slammed home the loading race and the deadlift ladder. But that was yesterday. What about today? No change. He also wins the car walk and the log lift. In fact, he has safely made it so that right now he has a 6-point lead over Kevin Ferris. I predicted that these two would be going on to your WSM final. Outside of my fabulous predictions, what is also truthful here is Tom Stoltman now with a 6-point lead. This means that if he goes out there and skips the wrecking ball tomorrow, he'd still be in the stone off, which is basically a victory for Tom, right? He's going to win the stone off. So even if he didn't compete, that's all he has to do is a stone off, and he'd win that anyway. But that's not going to happen because if he goes out there and holds the freaking thing for 1 second, it's a free pass. So even before tomorrow comes along, we can say that Tom is your Group 1 winner. It's not official yet, but barring injury or something bad happening or us getting some kind of bad, crazy news item tonight while we sleep, Tom Stoltman, your 2021 World's Strongest Man, has won Group 1 of the World's Strongest Man qualifier and will be moving on to the finals. And another spoiler alert, as we go through this video, you're going to see something common amongst that. Now, who's in the lead? We're going to ask those questions. But whoever is in the leads of these groups looks pretty freaking good. Kevin Ferris is in your 2nd place position. That means if we went to a stone off right now, before we see what happens in the wrecking ball tomorrow, it'd be Kevin Ferris versus Gabriel Riom for the stone off. Kevin only has to match Gabe, but Gabe would have to surpass whatever Ferris does, and Kevin would get the privilege of going second to see whatever Gabe does. So he's in good position, but that's where we're at in Group 1. I don't think there's a whole lot else to talk about in Group 1, really. It is what it is. But Group 2, man, there's a lot of stuff to talk about in Group 2. Right off the bat, Mitchell continues to dominate. Now, he did not, full disclosure, he did not do what Tom did and get nothing but max points across the board. It's not 6, 6, 6, 6, 6. It's not. But he did win the third event, the car walk, one of the most impressive times of the day, third overall, and really only 1/100th. I didn't stutter. 1/100th of a second separating Mitchel Hooper from having the third fastest time of the day and the second fastest time of the day. That's all that separated 1 and 2 was 1/100th of a second. But even though he didn't get 6 points in the log lift, dude still went out there and took a tie for second. So Bobby Thompson, log lift monster that we all know, managed 8 reps. Mitchell could have phoned it home. He could have taken it easy. He didn't. He went out there and pushed and pushed and pushed, and he still managed to tie Brian Shaw with 7, which gave him 4.5 points in that. Means he has 22.5 points overall. Not quite a 6-point lead, but 5.5 is basically 6. It's basically 6. So Mitchel Hooper kind of finds him in a very similar territory that Tom is in for tomorrow. He can't really skip the wrecking ball, but if he goes out there and scores 1 point, he can't be caught. So he wins Group 2. So I think it's fair and safe to say, barring some kind of news tonight, Mitchel Hooper has won Group 2 of the world's strongest man. Bravo to him. A few weeks ago, none of us knew who this kid was, or most of us didn't know who this kid was. People know now. People know now. They're paying attention. The hype is real. The hype is real. And Mitchel Hooper is taking down 4-time world's strongest man, Brian Shaw, in the qualifier. Several other decorated stars here. It was a pretty stacked group. And Mitchel Hooper is going on. Bobby Thompson. I said Bobby Thompson was going to make the world's strongest man final this year. As of right now, he's in a good place. He's at 17 points, which gives him a 3.5 point lead over Brian Shaw. That's good. That's a big lead. Brian had an interesting day. We could talk about Brian all day. Brian started out yesterday with a second place finish for 5 points. He had to like that loading race finish for him. That was good points. But then in the deadlift ladder, Brian did not look good at all. And people said, well, here's his reasons for it, and he probably did it intentionally, or this, that, and the other thing. Brian did not do it intentionally. And some people are saying he didn't even try the fifth stone. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm not there watching, but here's why I suspect he didn't do it intentionally, and here's why I fully expect Brian did attempt the fifth rep and didn't get it up. Since he was in second place after the loading race, that meant that he had the luxury of sitting back watching how everyone except Mitchel Hooper, so everyone not named Mitchel Hooper, got to do. He knew what he needed to do, and he knew there were already 3 people that had done some pretty impressive stuff. There were already 2 people before him that had completed 5 reps. So if you see people complete 5 reps, you don't go out there and say, I'm going to get 4 and stop, especially when there's one guy behind me. That doesn't make any sense. So I fully expect Brian gave it what he had, and he did that. So there were a lot of concerned Brian Shaw fans yesterday. Those who were concerned, they remained concerned with the car walk because Brian went out there and got 19.97, a little under 20 seconds, which is a good time. It's a pretty good time. But the people in his group didn't let it easy on him. They went out there and kicked butt. This was a big, big, big group on the car walk, and a sub 20-second time was only good enough for 2 points for Brian. So that meant that now he was setting, I believe he was tied for third, but if you believe in momentum, he's tied for third with 2 other guys, not one guy. He's tied for third with 2 other people at that point, but slipping back-to-back 5th place finishes, right? So there was a lot of concern with Brian Shaw, and he needed to do something in the last event of the day, the log lift, to really make something happen. So what happened there? Brian Shaw comes in with the log lift, pushes up 7 reps. It was a big total. Mitchel Hooper could only manage to tie him, and only Bobby Thompson passed him. So I think Brian would have preferred had Mitchell only moved to 6 and took his 4 points. And to be fair, Mitchell could have done that. It still would have given him 5-point lead here. He didn't need that extra half a point. That extra half a point is very, very important to Brian Shaw. It's not as important to Mitchel Hooper here. So, but anyway, that's what happened. But Mitchel Hooper got the 7 reps, 4.5 points, split with Brian Shaw. Now Brian, he's in third place, which if you know Brian, he's one of the best stone lifters in the world. He does not want to be in a stone off, and he hasn't needed a stone off in the last 13 freaking years. He just goes out there and wins group after group after group. He's not winning the group this year. It's already sewed up. Like I said, Mitchel Hooper wins. So if Brian makes the final, he has to do it through the stone off. Good news for Brian is he's one of the best stone lifters in the world, and he's one of the very, very, very few guys that can win from the third place position, which he might find himself in. Because if you look in the wrecking ball hold, Brian's got a great grip. He's going to do great, okay? But he's currently trailing 3.5 points by Bobby Thompson. If we don't count on this half point, we look at that as like 4 points. That basically means that Bobby basically there could be three people between them, and there'd be a tie at that point. So Brian has to make big, big movements. So more than likely, if Brian is going to get in there, it's going to be through third place in the stone off. But he can do that. He can win the stone off from the third place position. But if you ask him or anyone else if they'd rather go from the second or third, they're going to tell you they'd rather compete from the second place position. There's not anybody out there with it would choose third. I'm going to read the comments real quick, just make sure I'm not neglecting one while I go through these results. Groups, 1 point, I think you did the math right. Ryan Shaw can't come in second and only lose to Payne. So if Brian gets max points tomorrow, that'd be 19.5. If Bobby Thompson got 1 point, that would be 18. So Brian could actually come in second. It is possible to get second, but it would take him getting first place in the wrecking ball hold and Bobby Thompson getting last. That's basically the only way it could happen. Not very likely for those things to go down, especially when Mark Felix is in your group. If Mark Felix is in your group, he probably got a good shot of winning that wrecking ball, so you're fighting for second. If Brian Shaw gets second, he can't finish second, so he has to get that third place position. So in any event, that's probably what it looks like. Brian Shaw's going to be fighting for a chance to get the stone off from the third place position. So someone asked, what advantage does the second place give you in the stone off? Great question. Great question. I'll go through this real quick and we'll move on best of the results and the reactions because there's a lot of exciting stuff I want to talk to you guys about here. The big difference between this is this. If you are in the second place position, you get the privilege of seeing how the third place position guy does before you. So you know what you have to do. Now, that may not seem like a big, major advantage. It's nice, right? But you're like, well, they're still doing the same thing. But they're not doing the same thing. Here's the difference. If you're in the third place position, you have to do one more stone than the guy in the second place to win. You actually have to beat the second place competitor to move on. All the second place competitor has to do is tie you to win. So if you both lift 4 stones, second place moves on. You're out of it, third place. On the other hand, you look at it from the second place position. If you both lift 4, yay, that's all you need to do. You win. So in order to win from the third place, you have to do more stones than the second first place. That's the big advantage. So hopefully that makes sense. Group 3. All right. If Oleksii is your heartwarming story, if Oleksii is who you're looking at and Oleksii is what you wanted to focus on and who you wanted to root behind because of things outside of strongman right now, good news. He turned in a big day 1. He turned in another big day 2. Wasn't quite as big as day 1, but it was still pretty big. Like the Mitchel Hooper, he's got a 5.5 point lead here, which is essentially, again, 6 points. Okay? It's not 6 points, but it might as well be. So much like the other guys here, we can pretty much say, barring injury or some kind of catastrophic event, we know who wins Group 3. We know who wins all of these groups, essentially. Oleksii Novikov is going to be your Group 3 winner in the 2022 World's Strongest Man and sail on into the finals. Because as long as he goes out there and manages to hold for a split second and doesn't get a 0, he can't be caught. He can't be caught. But where this thing gets really interesting is before the event ever started, before we did 1 pound of lifting in the 2022 World's Strongest Man, I was excited about this group. I was super excited about this group because of the 4 guys who are in the top 4 positions right here. Oleksii Novikov, Adam Bishop, Trey Mitchell, Rob Kearney. I think they're so evenly matched. Sometimes they're really good at the same events, like Novikov and Rob Kearney, and many times they're kind of doppelgangers. You could say similar things about Adam Bishop and Trey Mitchell. The things that these guys are good at, the other guy is really good at, and vice versa. And they're evenly matched. So I thought, wow, this is going to be a crazy thing. Props to Oleksii because, again, he's ran away with it. But that has made that fight for second place vicious. Adam Bishop has it right now, but he's only got it by a half a point. Look at that. Adam Bishop's got 16, but Trey Mitchell is right there at 15.5. And I said earlier, what Brian Shaw has going for him, right, is he's one of the very, very, very few guys who can win a stone off from the third position. Well, guess who joins him in that group? Trey Mitchell is another guy who can win a stone off from the third position. Most guys can't do that. So Trey Mitchell, he wants to be second. Again, everybody wants to be second. Nobody wants to be third. But make no mistake about it, Trey Mitchell is good enough in the stones that he can beat anyone not named Tom Stoltman or Brian Shaw in a stone off from the third position, basically. Am I saying that he beats? Am I saying if tomorrow ends exactly in this order that Trey Mitchell advances because he beats Adam Bishop in a stone off from the third position? I'm not saying that, but I am saying he definitely can. He definitely can. So what Adam Bishop wants to do is maintain that second position. He definitely doesn't want to get beat by Trey Mitchell in the wrecking ball hold. He'd like it if Rob Kearney could go ahead and jump above Trey Mitchell so that he doesn't have to contend with him. But I don't see Rob Kearney beating Trey Mitchell in that hold. And Trey Mitchell is kind of interesting. When you look at Trey Mitchell's grip, it's kind of interesting. In certain grip events, Trey has a really, really good grip. In other events, it's not so good. He really struggles with things like farmers and stuff where he has to pick implements up. But where you're just expected to reach and hold something like in a Hercules hold or something like that, Trey tends to do pretty well. So, again, if you're Adam Bishop, you hope that Rob Kearney, who doesn't have one of the greatest grips out there, can do something big here and stop Trey. But more than likely, Trey is going to wind up in either the third or second place position, probably third at worst after the wrecking ball hold. So where they sit now, Novikov, Bishop, Mitchell, that's probably what it looks like after tomorrow's first event. And that means you've got something exciting. I hate stone offs. I can't stand stone offs. But even though I don't like them and can't stand them, I'll be excited to watch that stone off if it's Bishop 2, Mitchell 3. Sign me up for that one. Even though I don't like stone offs, I want to see that one. I want to see what Mitchell can do because Bishop is no stone slouch. So, be interesting. If that happens, we'll get a real chance to see how bad Trey Mitchell wants to be in the final. Group 4. The Dragon dominated yesterday. Does he continue to dominate? Yeah. Guess what, guys? He has 21.5 points. Maxime's at 17. So it's a little bit different for Martins. Again, everyone else so far that we looked at has a 5.5 or 6 point lead. Essentially, they've assured themselves a spot in the final already. They've essentially assured themselves a victory. Maxime's only up 4.5 points. So he's not quite in the same position. He's going to have to do a little bit of work. He isn't your guaranteed winner, okay? But I'm basically saying, yeah, Martins won the freaking Group 4. Because the only way that he doesn't win it is not only if he goes out there and basically tomorrow he has to go out there in the wrecking ball hold, finish worst, and then Maxime would have to win. And that may not even be enough because, look, Shane Flowers had to withdraw. So let's take a look at this real quick. If we do the math, he's up by 4.5. If he gets 6 points, Maxime is going to get 2 at worst because he can't get 0 as long as he does something. So that's 4. So actually, I take everything I just said back. I take everything I just said back. Maxime is safe. Or not Maxime. Martins is safe. He's going into the finals. I just did it because of Shane Flowers being withdrawn. If Shane Flowers hadn't withdrawn, everything I just said would have stood up. Martins would have to go out there and basically not avoid worst and first. But even if that happens tomorrow, because Shane is out of the competition, it works to Martins' favor. So he is your Group 4 winner, barring something catastrophic tonight or some kind of injury. Maxime had to struggle all day. It started out interesting. He ended not in the best position on day 1. He came out and only got 3 points in the car walk, which, to be fair, I didn't expect Maxime to do that great in the car walk because it's a yoke type event, especially the way they were doing it, strapped on the shoulders rather than carrying it. Figured he'd probably struggle there. He did. Maybe 3 is pretty good. But to be honest, with the way some of these other gentlemen did, Maxime looked like he had a tough route to the finals. And you pretty much had yourself thinking, if Maxime is going to have a shot here, he needs to come out and win the log lift in this group. That's what he needs to do. Well, guess what he did? He went out and won the freaking log lift in the group. And he did it with 10 reps, which is the best mark of the day. Okay? So he gets 6. He goes from out of contention to into the second place position, and Maxime is a good enough stone lifter that he isn't going to be a ton of guys in that 3-2. He's not one of those positions I was talking about. But he's darn good enough that if he's in that second place position, you're probably not knocking him out of it. He can hold that. So I feel like Group 4 is the one that I was telling the guys about that were watching me today. I feel like this is the group that's most easy and most comfortable to call not just the first place position, but the first two. Out of Group 4, I think you're looking at Martins Licis and Maxime Boudreau going on into the 2022 final. All right? And welcome to those guys who decided to come back and have already heard most of this stuff all day long. Okay, one group left to get through, guys. And then I'm going to go baby my doggies until tomorrow morning, in which case I hope some of you guys come back. All right, Group 5, Luke Stoltman. It's not perfect points. It's not what younger brother Tommy did. Okay, he didn't get 6.66. But what he did do is we've got a 6.664 1/2. We've got a 6.645 1/2. We've got a 6.654 1/2. We've got 23 points. So it's not full points for Luke, but it's the second highest mark, trailing only younger brother Tom. Tom's perfect across the board with 24. No one else has 23 plus. So the worst that Luke has done in anything was a second place in the car walk. He comes out there, gets a stellar time of 16.65. Probably didn't need to do that. Did it well. We'll get to something else and who he came second to in a minute. We're going to talk about that. But right now I want to focus on who's at the top of the board here. And then he was in a great position for the log lift. Well, we already know that Luke is a great log lifter, right? He defended that position because he came out there and got 10 reps for a boom, a big 6-pointer, tying the best mark of the day, equaled only by Maxime, who we just spoke about a minute ago. So that guaranteed him max points there, and he did it after everybody went. That's the other part. He had the privilege of going after everyone but Evan Singleton, basically. And he knew what he needed to do there. He didn't need to put up that big rep. He knew with just a few points he could sit pretty comfortable. He didn't phone it in. He put up a big 10 even though he didn't need to. And now he finds himself, get this guys, even though he has 23 and not 24 points, he actually has the biggest lead of anybody. Younger brother is only 6 points ahead of Kevin Ferris. Luke Stoltman is 7 points ahead of second place. He could literally take 0 tomorrow and still win the event. He's the only one that can say this. He doesn't have to show up tomorrow. He can stay in the freaking hotel. He's in the final and wins. 7 massive points right now. Crazy. Props to him. Now, there's a story here, right? There's a story here. So Melstead right now, again, last year he made the final. Very, very few expect him to do it. This year, as the way things started playing out, I started saying, hey, once it looked like Evan Singleton was out of the competition, which we'll get to in a minute, it looked like Evan had to withdraw. Then I started saying, wow, with Evan out, Melstead may make 2 finals in a row that no one expected him to. You got to give him credit for that. Well, as of right now, he is in that second place position. He's got 16. He's only got a 1-point lead there, so he's going to have to fight and work tomorrow, but he could do it. But when I say we thought Evan was out, if you notice, Evan's got some numbers down here, right? Evan's got some numbers. We were told that he had a withdrawal yesterday, and we were told that it was due to heat exhaustion. And then there were rumors and murmurs that he was actually injured and some other things. Things come out overnight that he actually had an allergic reaction and had to go through treatment for that. Get the little, I don't know if it was EpiPen or what it was, but they did stuff to him. He had medical evaluations. He wanted to continue. The doc said, you're good to go. He said, great, I'm going. I questioned this morning. Okay, yeah, he's back. But what does back really mean? There's a difference between being there and being ready to compete. All questions about that were put to bed in the freaking car walk because Evan Singleton did a sub 10-second run. I'm not an Evan Singleton fan. Don't like the guy. You don't have to. He comes back from being out, done, finished, not even competing in the deadlift ladder. And he mashes the best time of the day. And not just the best time of the day. The best time of the day by a big margin. Nearly 2 full seconds. over him, and essentially second and third because they basically tied. But yeah, a sub 10-second run, and then you started looking at the leaderboard, and he went from like basically not worst to first, but worst to a big jump, and you're like, wow, he's a player. All he has to do now to make it is come out there and do a good log lift, and guess what? Evan's a pretty good log lifter, but we also know, as was reminded me in the chat, Evan's been dealing with shoulder issue. You know what you got to have working pretty well when you're doing log pressing? You better have your shoulders in order. Well, Evan did not. Evan did not. So he managed one rep. That 1.5 points doesn't get the job done. Now he trails Ethor by 6.5 points, which, if you're doing the math at home, means that Evan Singleton is eliminated. If he goes out there and gets 6, that still puts him at 15.5, even if Melsted doesn't hold the thing for a second. It's not enough. He cannot do it. Now, I guess you could make some sort of argument and play the thing, but basically, Evan is out. He's mathematically eliminated at this point. So you pretty much got who's going to be in there with Stoltman. Is it going to be Ethor or John Steven? And we'll find out tomorrow. That's basically what it looks like. And so that's how the day 2 of the World's Strongest Man shook up. That's how everybody came and fared, showed out. But in basically all 5 groups, we know who has won. We know who is walking in the World's Strongest Man. And in most of the groups, there's an interesting battle for a second, which is kind of nice. We're going to get to see some people compete and see how bad they want it tomorrow. In Group 4, though, it looks pretty much like we know who's headed that way. But in every group but Group 4, should be some fun for that second place finish. Should be some real fun in all of these groups to see who's going on from Groups 1, 2, 3, and 5. So anyway, that's how it was. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed hanging out with everyone. Enjoyed pressing the F5, even though we don't have to because it auto refreshes. But what I want to encourage you to do, if you're watching this, like and subscribe. More importantly than liking and subscribing, or equally as important, tomorrow, 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, we go live again to see how everybody does on the Day 3 qualifier. Come join us. It's a lot of fun. We hang out, we laugh, we cry. We don't do much crying, but we try to laugh. Come join us. We'll see you then for Day 3 of the World's Strongest Man. Bye, everyone.